I would just say a little bit about the evolutionary worldview, just because I think that it has really changed things. It is a relatively new view. When I say relatively new, I mean of the last 200 years, really, starting with the German idealists, people like Hegel and Schelling, who seem to be the first to really sort of say, to look at history, look at ourselves as part of an unfolding that's actually going somewhere, an unfolding of the absolute, I think, was what Schelling called it in about 1800. And that's well before Darwin, which is one whole chunk of evolution, but I think it's much bigger than that. And of course, now we know that the whole universe is one vast emergence, one unfolding process that began with the Big Bang nearly 14 billion years ago. It does actually really change things, and I think it changes things much more than we perhaps have let in as yet. I think it's a view that's going to become much more a part of our context, over time, as I'm sure Integral will in its own way, just the same way. Because I think that, because actually everything is in movement, everything is in flux, and it's also developing. We're actually going somewhere that actually is, I believe, that there's actually a direction. Things are going towards more complexity, more integration. I mean, it's a bumpy ride, admittedly, with lots of rough turns. People sometimes say, well, it doesn't seem like we're going anywhere. But the bigger picture, to my mind, we really are. I think this view, once you start letting it in, it's not just that it's, the big picture of sort of planets and stars and collisions in space and matter forming and, all these sort of big things like that. It easily seems like, going to the planetarium where you get a view of something outer going on like a deep time movie. But because I think the more implicating part of it is that it's not out there, it's us. I mean, we are that process. There wasn't any point where we were separate from it. Before the Big Bang, there was nothing. And then out of that explosion, that creative explosion, that first cause, we are that first cause becoming manifest. I mean, there's no way we couldn't be. And that is what we are. And yet we still tend to think of ourselves, I think, as very much static, fixed entities, far too much. Although we all know, if we think about it, well, yes, that's true, I'm not really a fixed psychological self or psyche. But I think often in our emotional relationship to it, we haven't it hasn't really percolated enough yet. By all means, I know this myself. I'm always waking up to the fact that things are really evolving. The spiritual impulse is evolving. Everything is actually changing and evolving. We are that process.
My conversation with the people I serve is often about working with the overwhelming intensity of being alive in a time in which we have to synthesize so much. It used to be that at 21 you were an adult and you'd learn all it took to deal with life. But the curriculum has extended and extended and extended. And what it takes to really inherit a full conscious participation in our world and in our life opportunities takes most people a good deal longer than 21 years. It's a big curriculum. It stretches us. We feel inadequate. We feel confused very often. We feel stretched. We feel that we have to be something more than our parents ever could have been. We have to rise to an occasion that demands more than we can possibly fully fulfill. The world is, in crises that take a complexity of a nuance, a kind of brilliance of apprehension and action and self-responsibility and compassion and creativity that, it needs more than you can show up with, right? It's asking for more than any of us have. And And it's easy for us to feel, tremendous dysphoria, to feel confused, fearful, angry, despairing. There's a lot of nihilism. Sometimes the current crop of folks coming through adolescence, are called the whatever generation. Kind of, like defensive apathy, because like if I try to take this seriously, my inadequacy just overwhelms me. I can't deal. Well, that existential confrontation with a tremendously meaningful opportunity that is overwhelming, that's where we sit. We're all in that. Willing to face it to some degree, or, not totally, but, to some degree, we're all groping with that. That's the context of this conversation. That's what integral is an attempt. Integral theory, integral philosophy is an attempt to account for the totality of all this at once so that we can begin to get a grasp on this overwhelming, rapidly accelerating and complexifying world in all of its dimensionality.